Hey everyone, it's Icy, and I hope you're all staying happy, healthy, and safe. For those who aren't aware of it, Pokemon Rejuvenation version 13 is probably coming out sometime soon within the next few months. I figured because of this, I'd have one last run through with Rejuvenation version 12 as it is now. But because this would be my one last run through here, I wanted to make it something challenging. Not necessarily like a Nuzlocke, but I had other thoughts. Because I am potentially a massive masochist, I chose probably one of the most difficult challenge runs you could possibly imagine. Something that is potentially just as difficult as a Nuzlocke or even a very hard difficulty mode. Or even worse, an Ice Monotype on Intense mode. If you're not familiar with what a monotype run is, then don't worry, it's not that complicated. The title literally says it. You run through the game with Pokemon of only one type. Dual types are allowed, of course, because how else could you do this when most Pokemon are dual typed? And pre-evolutions are also allowed. So for instance, 8 different monotypes get to use Eevee as an Eevee before it evolves into whatever type of evolution that fits their mono run. The rest of the run is up to the user though. It's up to the player to decide whether or not they want to allow things such as Pokemon that Mega Evolve into their mono run's type, even when it won't Mega Evolve all the time and so forth. Thankfully, Mono Ice won't have that issue, but we're going to be having many more issues instead. Some mono runs will have rules regarding the battle mode being on set rather than switch. Set mode basically takes away your ability to switch out Pokemon after you KO one of your opponent's Pokemon. This run is already pretty difficult, so I'll be playing on Switch instead. Another rule monotype runs use at times is a dupes rule, which prevents duplicate Pokemon from being used. I won't be using that rule either. And to round off the rules that I'll be playing by, I will not be using items in battle, but I will be using a debug mod. I originally intended on not using the debug mod, which will become very apparent as I talk about how I started off the early game, but I also eventually realized how much of a handicap this run presented, and that I needed every Pokemon to be in top shape in order to win. This means that aside from Shadow Pokemon, who have preset IVs, every Pokemon that we use in this run from around the first gym badge and going forward will all have perfect IVs and usually a beneficial nature. If I'm completely honest, I probably would have ended up doing this anyways, seeing as how I'm a little bit too impatient to sit there soft resetting hoping that I can get a Pokemon that has at least 2 decent IVs and that's usable. But either way, with the rules laid out, it's time to dive into our adventure. I'll be covering all the big battles, the new additions to our party, as well as significant items and TMs that we grab along the way. We start off at the beginning of the game as usual, and after selecting my options, I make sure I grab the rare candy on the ship before spamming through the rest of the story text. Our next stop is going to be at the professor's lab, where we'll grab our starter. This is where things get tricky, because some monotypes can't use any of the starters available. Ice is unfortunately one of those mono runs where this occurs, along with Bug, Electric, Normal, and Rock. This means you have 2 options. Either you can debug in an appropriate starter, or you can choose one of the starters that's available and you can use it until you can capture a Pokemon that's usable for your monotype. I took the second option, so you're going to see me using a Froakie for a while. I use this Froakie to clear out a path to the Cresselia Hotel, and later to complete the story up through a couple of battles in the sewers where we can grab the coin case. Once I have the coin case, I begin my deep descent into a large gambling session of Voltorb Flip. I'm no expert at Voltorb Flip, but I'm pretty decent at it, so it only takes me a few hours or more to rack up 18,000 coins. Probably wondering, what are those coins for? Well, 6,000 of those coins are going to be going to buying 6 seals. Seal is the only Pokemon that we can actually grab for our Mono-type at this given point. While Seal is a Mono-Water type Pokemon, it does evolve into Dewgong, which is a Water-Ice type. The other 12,000 of the coins are actually for buying out the TMs in the casino. This gives me Flash, Substitute, and Hidden Power. I wasn't really feeling that I was quite up to the challenge yet though. I still felt really unprepared. So the next thing I did was I grabbed the Leaf Stone from the Gearin Park, I sold it, and used that to buy Pokeballs. We won't be needing the stone, and my next goal here is to collect as many achievement points as possible. I also use this as an opportunity to grind up one seal in the park. Everything in the park gives either attack or speed EVs. So I figured that was pretty alright at the time. And while I was doing that, I was earning achievement points. I tolerated grinding one of the seals up to level 19 before I finally had about 11 achievement points. So that allowed me to grab our first EV training room card. After grabbing the attack card, that means we have access to the HP, speed, and attack rooms. So I finally had my first fully EV trained seal. The seal was also almost level 20, which meant I could clear out all the trainers in East Gearin City, including the Troll Bridge trainer. This probably seems excessive, but having the streets cleared out meant that I had multiple clear paths that I could run up and down on. And this meant I could rack up steps and grab even more achievement points. Also, while we run around, we raise the happiness of our Pokemon, and wouldn't you know it, there's achievement points for that as well. After completing 4 out of 10 Tired Feet achievements, along with a few other achievements, we can grab the rest of the EV training room cards and finish up EV training all 6 seals. We can finally play the game. Fights left over in the sewers and even the Garbage Gang boss battle are nothing to really talk about. The SEAL team actually makes quick work of them. And after that, we can actually head on over to Route 1 in Goldenwood Forest. Although I do make another quick stop at the Crusolia Hotel to grab the Golden Hammer. While this is technically a bug on the current version of the game, you can actually use the Golden Hammer to use Rock Smash before you even have the first gym badge, and before you even have the TM itself. While in Goldenwood Cave, it's incredibly important that we use the Golden Hammer to grab a rare candy that's blocked off by some rocks in there. After that, we can clear out the Goldenwood Cave with Medellia, and we can exit outside the back to take her on in a battle. For the most part, Medellia's battle is just like every other early game battle. Very simple, just spam attacks and hopefully win. Of course, knowing my luck, everything that could go wrong did go wrong. So my seals missed Icy Wind, and towards the end, her Togepi got not 1, but 2 Ancient Power Boost. I barely scraped by with just 1 seal left. Of course, I could have just reset if things got really bad and hope for the best. But as you can see, this is probably a good indicator of how this run is going to go. Once the battle finishes and we head out the front of the Goldenwood Cave, I grab our easiest ability capsule in the game and begin capturing Shadow Pokemon and taking on Zen Grunts. While I can't use any of these Shadow Mons, capturing them is sometimes quicker than fighting them. Although at some point I got bored of that and I started knocking them out because otherwise they were just going to rot in my PC, and at least if I knocked them out they'd give me XP. There were actually a couple of difficult battles before Zeta with the grunts, but Zeta himself was nightmarish. It took both the special attacking and physical attacking seals that I created to outdamage his gloom. Type Null was also insanely bulky, and I had to rely on flinch hacks to take that out as well. Rift Gyarados is another issue. It has access to Thunderfang, and this almost nearly one-shots every single seal that I have. My goal here is to use the seals that I invested HP EVs into to tank the Thunderfangs and use Icy Wind so I can lower its speed. After I've done that a few times, and by that I mean I need to lower its speed 3 times, I begin the long battle of slowly headbutting the Gyarados to death, hoping for flinches. I think I only got 1 flinch though, and otherwise I had good luck with Gyarados missing Thunderfang. With these difficult battles out of the way, we're free to head back to Jinner's lab in Giran City for a battle with Medellia as Medellia. Obviously, it doesn't matter if we win or lose this, and afterwards we can clear out all the new trainer battles in the city, and the gym trainers to get almost the entire team of Seal up to level 20 before battling Venam. Intense Venam is annoying. Under normal circumstances, my team of Seals would probably go 1-for-1 with her team, and I'd have a badge. Her field changes that. Her Ivysaur has Sleep Powder, which never misses on this field. I also only have 1 seal that outspeeds the Ivysaur without dropping its speed with Icy Wind. This means I have to flinch hack that Ivysaur. At least that's what it seems like, aside from my plan that utilized using the 3 rare candies that I've collected so far. I gave things a rest and I came back the next day with a new plan, a strategy suggested by a friend. Using seals that outsped the Ivysaur, I could use Substitute on them, which we got from the TM that we bought from the casino, and then we could also use Encore to trap the Ivysaur into spamming Sleep Powder on our seals that had set up Substitute that blocked it out. Ivysaur would swap out, but we'd get free hits on the next Pokemon, and I would win that way. This seemed like a winning strategy, but I didn't account for how strong the Seviper was, or how bulky. Seviper also needed special attention because I needed to lower its speed with Icy Wind, and flinch hacks it constantly with Headbutt. So, at the end of the day, this battle required luck to win despite all the strats I threw at it. I'd also like to mention that at this point I was actively using Debug for the purposes of creating new seals, setting their EVs, and their IVs. I'd realized at this point just what kind of handicap I'd given myself with this challenge, and that I truly needed every possible boost to win. Heal is a pretty bad Pokemon, but it was all we had at this time. And needless to say, after a huge amounts of resets, I finally defeated Venam. I really hope you're entertained so far, because these early boss battles are going to be brutal. Next up on the list after Venam is more story, and that leads to a battle with 2 Muna and a Pulse Musharna. Half the seals fainted, but although the Muna were annoying with screens and shockwave, eventually I took them out and flinch-hacked the Musharna until it fainted. Nothing could be as brutal as VNM. At least that's what I thought at the time. Trust me, we'll find worse later. To Route 2, I barely had enough money to buy a pass due to all the achievement point farming I did earlier. On Route 2, we're led into our first battle with Nim, which looks to be a challenge. At a time, I adjusted the IVs of my seals so that when I taught them Hidden Power, they'd have Hidden Power Water. With access to HP Water, my seals cleave through Nim's Solrock and Lunatone duo. The real irritation lies beyond them, though. Her Inkay has a 100% accurate hypnosis on this field. This gives her the opportunity to set up screens with her Esper, and from there, a few critical hits made this a lot closer than what it needed to be. Nim thankfully only has 4 Pokemon at this point, though. If she had had a full team, then this could have been trouble. After this, we'll enter the Amethyst Caves, and we'll have a second battle with Zeta. This battle is a little bit troublesome, but thankfully we have a partner. As much as I hated battling against her, battling with VNM is amazing. She actually carries us throughout the whole Zeta fight. Despite how amazing VNM is as a partner though, our seals can't make it through the Rift Galvantula fight. Unfortunately, the Joltik's electric attacks wear them down too much, and were actually knocked out almost before the Rift Galvantula comes out even. This isn't the end though. I move back a save file, so that I can exit the Amethyst Steps. Here on Route 2, we can collect a new addition to this run. Crab Brawler. Hidden in various headbutt trees, we can find crabs. Of course. Crab Brawler is, for one, faster than Seal. It has no weakness to electric type attacks, and it has genuinely decent abilities and, honestly, stats for this point in the game. I know this seems like a meme, and it kinda is, but we just went from an entire team of seals to an entire team of crabs. I had to go back to Giron City to get my new team of crabs sorted, unfortunately. But we're a lot better off on this challenge now than what we were previously. Also, I just wanted to point this out. I excitedly named the first crab brawler I caught Mr. Krabs, despite it being female. It turned out to be the only female on the entire team. With the new team, we can go ahead and kick Zeta's rear end a second time. The crabs learn Power Up Punch at level 22, and with an Iron Fist boost, they tear through everything they touch. My crabs seem like they'd be worse off against the Rift Galvantula due to the Joltik's use of Psybeam, but they still actually do much better. Not only do they survive a little bit better, but they even take the heat off of VNAM. It only took a couple of tries, mainly to figure out which Joltik's VNAM would target, but we were able to defeat the Rift. With this done, we can clear out the rest of the cave and enter Sheerden Village. Once we're in the village though, I use Truck Guy's services to backtrack to Giran, to raid Melia's room, where we can grab an experience share. I also finish up completing the buying items achievements, and I also take care of another trainer in the alternative part of the sewers. Earlier, this trainer was very difficult for me to defeat using seals. Crab Brawler makes it past him with ease, and because of this, we can grab another rare candy. Then, back at Sheerden, I do a bit more AP grinding. Using the now accessible daycare, I can hatch eggs. This is another achievement that we can complete. 100 eggs gives us 15 achievement points, but we can also complete another set of the Tired Feet achievements for another 6 AP. After having farmed enough AP, I ignore all other side objectives and head straight into our first battle with Kita. At level 25, our crabs have access to Dizzy Punch, which is fairly strong when boosted by Iron Fist. This alone isn't enough to beat Kita, however Dizzy Punch comes with a 20% chance of confusion. With a combination of Dizzy Punch confusing Kita's Pokemon, and Power Punch boosting my crab's attack stat, I just narrowly break through the first Kita battle. It actually took me only 2 tries, but I was down to my last Crab Brawler, who lived on 1 HP. After we've dealt with Kita, we can heal up and start raiding Kartos Mountain. It's here in these mountains that we'll find our next ice type. In the hands of a Team Zen member, we can snag a Shadow Vanillite. After that, we can slowly work our way through the mini SEC battles and Zen grunts until we confront Medellia. Winning this battle is optional, and after all that soft resetting I've been through, I decide to let her have this victory. After the Medellia fight, we'll take on the Rift Volcanion, which is the easiest Rift battle in the entire game. I seriously doubt this fight needs an explanation, considering the Rift only took one of my Pokemon. With Team Zen's Kartos Mountain base destroyed, and the Rift Volcanion taken care of, we can now just go through the chat options about purifying Shadow Pokemon. And then I begin my preparations for the second Kita fight. To do this, I head into the Sheerden Help Center, and I take on the cute Pokemon request. This requires us to catch an Apom and trade it to someone. The reward we receive isn't the Pokemon she trades us back, which is a Pancham, but rather a rare candy from the Help Center itself. Between the 5 rare candies I have now collected, and the 4 I bought with achievement points, I was able to evolve 1 Seal into Dugong at level 34, before reverse candying it back down to level 25. It learns Brine and Aurora Beam in this process, finally giving it some decent stab options. I also need to mention that I missed covering one of the rare candies that we collected earlier. We would have collected another rare candy from the secret entrance in VNAM's gym. With my preparations complete, I rushed into the second Kita battle. I had 4 crabs, 1 seal, and 1 Dugong. I initially had a more complex strategy, but I realized eventually that I didn't actually need it. There was a much simpler solution that I should have known about all along. One of Crab Brawler's other abilities is Anger Point. When it's hit with a critical hit, Crabrawler's attack maxes out at +6. Spirakita has a Lapras, and he loves to use Frost Breath with that Lapras. Frost Breath is an Ice-type attack that always critical hits. By abusing this, I can have my Crabrawler sweep 4 out of 6 of his members, before his Donphan eventually comes in and uses Ice Shard to take my Crabrawler out. Then my Dugong comes back in and finishes off his Donphan to round off the battle. I also want to take the time to mention that evolving Dugong like I did was absolutely unnecessary. Keep in mind that I didn't actually know this at the time, but while having Dugong and having Aurora Beam were really nice, if I really wanted to, I could have had a Vanillix instead. You see, Shadow Pokemon don't level up, and the experience they gain doesn't go to them immediately. Instead, it builds up. When a Shadow Pokemon is purified, it suddenly gains all the experience that it was missing out on earlier as a Shadow Pokemon. So if I grinded the Shadow Vanillite while it was still a Shadow Pokemon, I could have given it enough experience over time to evolve it into a Vanillix, with a couple of rare candies after purifying it. I didn't know this at the time of my playthrough though. Our next obstacle is going to be at the gate to Route 3, where Amanda will challenge us to a full 6-on-6 battle. Dugong makes quick work of most of her team though. At this point, I was actually really grateful for having a Dugong on the team. And despite what I said about Vanillix earlier, I do think Dugong would have done a lot better, simply just due to the fact that it did have water-type attacks. By pushing Amanda aside, we can exit onto Route 3. We'll have to handle multiple sets of trainers here, but eventually we'll run into Roram B, who actually proves to be a more challenging battle than our last couple of fights. You see, Roram B has multiple Pokemon on his team that can actually set up on us. He has a Bruxish with Swords Dance, and he has a Vilvion, as well as a Lilligant that both have Quiver Dance. It does suit his team, however, all of these Pokemon are very dangerous and they have to be handled properly. Having all of my party members at level 30 and ordering them just right makes this fight a lot easier though. After this, we'll go through the usual story progression of Rin preventing us from going into Golden Leaf Town, and us having to go find Venam in the Gear Sewers. The Chrysalis Manor becomes a small point of no return, so I do look over my team first before I head in. Once inside, we reach a point where we have a few puzzles, but we can also battle a few of the maids hanging out for some extra rewards. I make sure to grab the rare candy in the hedge maze, but I also grab the ability capsule and the rare candy that we can access once we've defeated all the maids. After that, we'll move on to our next gym battle. This one is very problematic. I seriously underestimated Marionette. The first answer people usually look to for the Marionette battle, especially on intense mode for mono runs, is usually Echoed Voice. You would get the TM from having 5 Zygarde cells. So it's very easy to get, and it receives 2 notable buffs on the field. So in my case, I do have Pokemon that can learn it. I have a Dugong that could learn it. However, unfortunately for me, Marionette has multiple Pokemon that have either electric or grass coverage, and they would 2-shot my Dugong before my Dugong could actually even get the Echoed Voice sweep set up. So I return to the only thing that I know how to do at this point when things go wrong. As I've learned so far with this playthrough, when things get rough and I can't find any answers, usually I have to just find a way to luck out. Realistically, I only needed to confuse 1 or 2 of Marionette's Pokemon using Dizzy Punch, and then for them to repeatedly hit themselves in confusion while I boosted up with Power Punch, and swept with my crabs. If you want to calculate the odds of this happening, be my guest, they are incredibly low, especially with the fact that Generation 7 lowered the chances of a Pokemon hitting itself in confusion from 50% to around 30% or 1/3. This does not help me out. However, after spending a few days soft resetting at this fight, I managed to actually confuse everything on her team with a single Dizzy Punch, although she did knock out multiple crabs in the process. Despite however unlikely this was, I was very grateful that this eventually happened. After we win the battle, we can get our next badge and be teleported out, right next to the TM for Facade. From there, we can finally enter Golden Leaf Town. First things first though, because of our new level cap, I can finally evolve the remaining seals into Dugong, and our Vanillite into Vanillish. I train up a second Dugong and the Vanillish, although I didn't add the Vanillish to my team. Following through the story, we eventually reach our next big battle, Alita. Alita seems like a free win until you reach her Hawlucha, which sweeps my entire team. The solution was actually pretty simple though. By giving the Vanillish full defensive EVs, it manages to tank a hit from the Hawlucha and KO it with a couple of Ice Beams. At this point in the game, as we progress through the story, we'll eventually have the opportunity to take on Agent C. Now, I don't really have any plans for taking on all the side bosses or all the side quests because we don't really need to in this mono run. However, I did go into this battle unprepared, and I still won it on my first attempt, so I figured it might be worth showing off. Aside from that interesting experience, we continue to pave ahead, and entering the Whispy Tower, we will eventually find ourselves facing off against Ellie and Sharon. This is possibly the only notable Ellie and Sharon battle in this run-through. It seems fair enough and pretty straightforward. However, I quickly discovered that any bad luck on my side, whether it's from a flinch from the Durant, or whether it's from any unnecessary status, essentially loses the battle for me. I decided at this point to ditch the remaining crab brawlers on my team and grab more Dugongs. With more Dugongs, they actually handled Ellie and Sharon much better. At this point, I was also using the Vanillish quite often. I haven't explained it yet, however, Shadow Pokemon in this game oftentimes have unique moves that they might not have otherwise. The move that Vanillish has is Will-O-Wisp, which you will see me using to great effect many times in this playthrough. After we deal with Ellie and Sharon, we can move on down to the basement of the Whispy Tower, and we can deal with Gira. You might think the Gira battle would be a problem, but the Dugongs actually handle it quite well. It probably helps that half of his team is weak to either one of Dugong's stabs, and the other half of his team is very frail. I focus on one Mon at a time, which helps greatly. Also, I neglected to mention this earlier, however the move Brine is actually pretty nice in doubles and especially nice for Dugong. Brine is only 65 base power. However, if you're using it on a target whose HP is halved, it doubles to 130 base power. While Dugong doesn't have the greatest special attack, 130 base power is pretty good, and it helps out tremendously. This means if I can weaken one side solely, then I can use the other Dugong to target that same side with a much stronger attack. After we deal with Gear's treachery, we can head on back to Golden Leaf Town, into the theater there, which is also the gym. Eventually, after we solve most of the theater's puzzle, we'll encounter Rin, who will want to battle to decide who can face Narcissa first. On Intense mode, Rin is actually fully prepared to take you on, compared to on the normal mode. Sableye is actually very capable of stalling out my Dugongs. My Dugongs don't have that much damage, and Sableye is pretty bulky. It'll throw out a Will-O-Wisp to burn my Dugongs, which will whittle them down, and then it'll just spam recover. His Arcanine is holding a magical seed, which takes full advantage of the field. On the Haunted Field, the magical seed will give a buff to the Pokemon's defense stats, and it will burn the user. But since Arcanine is a fire type, the burn has no effect. His Greninja also runs Hidden Power Ghost, again fully taking advantage of the field. Thankfully, he does have some weaknesses that we can exploit. After his Arcanine uses Close Combat, we can knock it out easily. Greninja is fairly frail, which means we can knock that out easily as well, and his Vibrava is 4 times weak to Ice, which means that's an easy one-hit KO. Unlike the last few battles, and even the gym battles before her, Narcissa's gym battle is brutally difficult. In fact, Narcissa was a complete stopping point for me. I had to take a step back and look at what I had available before moving on to this battle. For me, this meant completing a few of the help quests, mainly Nove's help quest, and getting her Eevee. Using a set of Sand Attack, Yawn, Curse, and Baton Pass, my goal was to create an opportunity for Eevee to boost up with Curse before passing the boost over to a Dugong that had priority moves. This likely sounds really bad, and that's because it is. Mono Ice doesn't have any access to Flash at all, unfortunately. And in a 1 versus 1, there's nothing I can really do. There's no gimmicks that Mono Ice can take advantage of on the Haunted Field, unfortunately. Originally, I started by putting Narcissus Rotom to sleep using Yawn. And then I switched into a Crab Brawler that I de-leveled with Reverse Candies. This meant that Narcissa would take out the Crab Brawler for certain, and then Eevee would stay healthy, while it attempted to boost up with Curse. The problem was the Rotom would always start off by trying to Wisp me. So eventually I gave up on that idea. The Rotom wasn't going to stay asleep for more than 3 turns anyways, so that wasn't exactly the best idea. Eventually I started going straight for Sand Attack, since this took less steps. That meant I'd have quicker attempts, and hopefully see success faster. This also meant that I wouldn't have to use a de-leveled Pokemon as a sack. This meant I could have a full team of 6, however, this was just as complicated. Unfortunately, I couldn't just spam Sand Attack and lower her Rotom's accuracy until it was nothing and then get the curses. You see, the AI for Pokemon Rejuvenation is actually pretty smart. If it has too many lowered stats, it'll switch its Pokemon out. This meant I could only use Sand Attack once or twice before the AI would react and switch out her Pokemon. I figured the odds of me getting 6 curses off against a Rotom weren't that different between the Rotom having -1 accuracy and -2. And since only using 1 Sand Attack was faster, that's what I went with. Again, keep in mind that the results you're seeing right here took days worth of resets, and I mean days. Winning the battle against Marionette took probably half a week, and winning the battle against Narcissa took the rest of that week. Even once I got the 6 curses and passed them on to the Dugong, I still had a bit of bad luck here as well. The Dugong actually missed a crucial KO on the Rotom, which ended up getting it paralyzed as well, and this put the entire sweep in danger. Fortunately, the Dugong did manage to punch a large hole into Narcissus' team, and the rest of my team managed to clean up. But it was still very dangerous, and there were still, of course, sleep shenanigans that happened later on in the battle. Thankfully, though, with Narcissus defeated, we can now progress through the story yet again. And thankfully, we're about to reach a point where Mono Ice becomes a lot less intimidating. Now that we've won Narcissus' gym badge, we can progress through the Whispy Ruins. Down here, we can catch multiple Phantoms, which we'll use these to breed a Phantom egg a little bit later on. Also, while down here, we can grab a Dawnstone. This will become very, very important later on as well. Afterwards, I herd all the Shuppet around the ruins and clear out the Pokegang that guards the exit. And at this point, I choose to leave the ruins and head back to Sheerden Village. Here in Sheerden Village, we can breed our Phantom, and then we can trade the egg away on Route 3. For our troubles, we'll get a Sneasel egg. Keep in mind that there's a ton of different eggs that this mystery egg could actually be. However, Sneasel is the only ice type out of all of those different eggs. I also took the time to grind out some more achievement points. This allowed me to get some more golden items. And with all of that done, I headed back to Route 4. Back on Route 4, we can challenge Nim to a battle for entry into Akua Town. I imagine at this point in the game, you'd expect me to win a challenging battle without luck or chance, and this time you would actually be right. While Sneasel won't actually help us on Nim's psychic terrain, the Dugong line can learn Signal Beam via the Mover Learner. This is especially important for stopping Nim's Malamar from sweeping us, as it's 4 times weak to Bug. Aside from that though, this is a slightly uphill battle, as Nim will almost immediately set up screens on her side of the field. Despite that though, we do have a few things in our favor. Half of Nim's team is weak to water-type attacks, which means if we double target them with Brine, we can get some big damage off. Ultimately, this battle was not too much of an issue, and once we finish this battle, we can find our way into Akua Town. And here in Akua Town is actually going to be our first stopping point for this journey. When I started this small mini-series, I planned to finish this in 1 to 3 uploads, which means the next upload could potentially be the end of it. And while that might seem a little bit far-fetched, considering that we only have 4 badges in on this first video, it's actually not. The early game for Mono Ice runs is brutal, but I can assure you that many of the battles to come are going to be much easier, much faster, and there's going to be a lot less to go over in between. I also want to put this out there, but this is my first time uploading something like this. I take on these challenges all the time in my spare time, but I figured for the first time that maybe I should actually upload something like this and organize all of it so people could actually see and view it, and maybe people would enjoy that. So hopefully you enjoyed this. Thank you all for watching, and I will catch you all on the next one. Peace.